Okay, once again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming in and making it to this session. On today's event, we are going to speak about the UPR, particularly Algeria. This session aims to do a comparative analysis of the OHCHR summary report of the stakeholders and of Algerian civil society's wants and needs. Especially, we'd like to address and really deconstruct the report and talk about allegations of the Sahrawi camps in Tindouf, particularly concerning the slavery and other allegations of executions and such matters. Again, we'll also incorporate the dilemma that Algerian and Sahrawi civil society face with the lack of ECOSOC status, which basically creates a dependency on international organizations' agenda and interest. Followed by, or the aim of the presentation is to ensure and aim to prioritize Algerian voices that will directly be affected by this UPR. So without further ado, I'd like to do the introductions. I think the best person to introduce you is always yourself. So I will introduce myself, and if we can go down the line for the speakers, if you guys can introduce yourselves, that would be fantastic. So again, without further ado, you guys all know me, Farida Bouattoura. I am the founding director for Advance, which is a NGO that is based in New York. It covers North African region. Particularly today, we're going to cover, of course, Algeria and the Tindouf camps. I am also the branch director for, Repost International for New York. And today I will be doing a breakdown. I will be doing a deconstruction of the summary report to show the allocations and resource of allocations to information. Other than that, without further ado, Kathleen, please take it away.
Hello, thank you for inviting me to attend this meeting. My name is Katlyn Thomas, and I was the former official of MINURSO directing legal affairs during the period of time when we were putting together a list of people eligible to vote in the referendum. And since that time, I've been involved with the people in the Sahrawi refugee camps, as well as in Western Sahara on this issue, and know some of the issues, including the issue of slavery accusations, fairly well.
I'll unmute myself. Thank you very much, Kathleen. Certainly a pleasure to have you here. Janet, can you please introduce yourself? Okay. Najla, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Najla Mohamedlamin. I am Sahrawi, born and raised in the Sahrawi refugee camps in southwest Algeria. I'm the founder and director of Al-Masar Library Center. I'm a human rights activist and based in the Sahrawi camps, but I traveled to different parts of the world to advocate for the Sahrawi people and for the rights of the Sahrawis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Najla. It certainly is a pleasure and honor to have you here. Janet? Hello?
Sorry about that. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, you can.
Right. I'm Janet Lenz. I've been involved with the Sahrawi since 1999 in the context originally of receiving children to the US for home visits as they go in Europe. I then began being involved on the ground. We have established an English school. We have hosted religious dialogues at their invitation, at the Sahrawis' invitation, and have had a lot of Americans go to have short-term experiences meeting the Sahrawi and offering various programs over the years. So it's been over 20 years now.
Thank you so much, Janet. Certainly is, your voice is certainly very, very insightful. We're honored to have you here.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Mahjoub Maliha, if you can please introduce yourself.
Hello, good afternoon to you all. My name is Mahjoub. I'm head of external relations of the CODESA, Collective of Sahrawi Human Rights Defenders, a human rights NGO that works on the human rights situation in the occupied territories of Western Sahara. I'm pleased to be with you today, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to have you here and hear your input. And last, certainly not least, Boukhalfa. Can you hear us? I know you were having technical trouble a little bit later. Hello? Okay, so hopefully we'll have him back with us. Boukhalfa is an executive board member of Repost International. They are a nonprofit located in France, and they cover largely, they cover North Africa, but largely Algeria. Okay, so without further ado, again, I'd like to point out, if you guys can see this, let me make sure you guys can see the statistics. I did send you guys the PowerPoint just so you can see. But basically what we did is we took the summary report and deconstructed it. And then afterwards created basically visual comparisons and compared it to a survey we did of Algerian civil society and of course to the summary report to analyze if basically they mirrored or if the Algerian voice, as this affects Algerian people, the UPR affects Algerian people directly, if their priorities were covered. So that I will basically start off with that. I will introduce the dilemma really that we face in Algerian civil society due to a lack of ECOSOC status. And so our voice in general tends to be underrepresented, even in concerns, basically that concerns us directly. So there were 15 joint submissions and 16 individual submissions in the summary report, with the joint submission starting from, joint submission 4, it excluded 1 to 3. In the joint submissions, only 11%. So I definitely want to read this to you guys because I think the numbers speak quite clearly of what's going on. Only 11% of the organizations were Algerian organizations domestically based in Algeria, while 89 were externally based organizations. 26 of those organizations involved in the joint submissions were Algerian or Algerian diaspora-led, while 73, about three quarters, were non-Algerian, neither diaspora nor domestic ties. Okay, a joint recommendation breakdown of the results resulted in 89 organizations contributions mentioned, with 44 out of those 98, a staggering 50% of them being Moroccan or Moroccan-administered. Furthermore, the 65 paragraphs of content covered a wide range of categories and topics. The highest mentioned topic was Tindouf camp conditions. 15 out of 64, 23.4% of the paragraphs were related to Tindouf refugee camps. 14 out of 64, that is 22%, cited concerns related to religious or cultural tied issues. Algeria has a population of 99% Sunni Muslim and about 1% of different faiths, Jewish, Christian, Protestants, and others. Yet 5 out of 64, approximately 8%, covered freedom of religion. As for freeing the detainees, which according to our surveys is the top priority for Algerians, it was only briefly mentioned in 2 paragraphs, meaning the top priority for Algerians and Algerian civil society only covers 3% of the content. According to our interviews again and survey, the second most significant concern is freedom of expression. And that was mentioned in 4 paragraphs. So quite clearly, unfortunately, the resulting summary document is a gross misrepresentation of Algerian civil society's need and expressed concern. So again, going back to our visual, this is really to further highlight the issue. Basically, the topic that is mentioned the most to the summary is Tindouf with 23.4%. Freedom of the detainees is 3%. Meanwhile, if you take a look at the survey we've conducted, the release of the prisoners is 24.8%, really 25%. And Tindouf was not even mentioned by Algerian civil society, not in any categories, not even by others. So quite clearly there is an issue, but the wording that is used in the summary report speaks of basically excessive, of numerous cases. So this is what we were concerned about. We really want to unfold what is going on, why the two do not mirror each other whatsoever, really. So again, the UPR is a unique mechanism in that it creates a safe platform for advocacy while, importantly, respecting the sovereignty of the nation in question. The issue of limited expression applies to everyone in Algeria. It is not an issue of ethnicity or gender. It is due to infringing laws that grant disproportionate leverage of authoritative discretion. It has left over 300 prisoners of conscience and continuous arrests. Unfortunately, it seems that Algerians are not limited in speech and advocacy merely by Algerian laws, but by international mechanisms such as the UPR in its inaccessibility. So the notion that Moroccan agenda with Tindouf overshadows this really is a desecration of sacred ground. Our understanding of the UPR mechanism is that it provides a safe platform for human rights, not a political tool. In presenting this mishmash of allegation, it really dilutes, the focus of our advocacy and directly affects these over 300 prisoners of conscience that are still in captivity. Not to mention that it presents no opportunity for solution nor results. So without further ado, all of these allegations that we talked about, this is why we have our wonderful speakers who are going to go over and fact check, unfold the situation in Tindouf, followed by a presentation of what do Algerians want. So without further ado, our first speaker, Katlyn, I'd like to read a little bit from the summary report, if you can, of course, speak to it, and let us know in your experience, what truth do these allegations have? So according to paragraph 30 in the summary report, which spoke of allegations made by Joint Submission 16th, and I quote, "The alarming testimonies received, including the account of a young girl who was enslaved at the age of 6 by a Sahrawi family in the refugee camps, and that Black people faced indifference by camp leaders who almost of whom have slaves." Okay, the paragraph also refers to 7,130 slaves yet to be emancipated. Paragraph 31 also refers to this Joint Submission 16 allegations, of serious violation of the Sahrawi people. In your experience and in your investigation of the matter, can you please unfold and give us a little bit more information on these allegations?
I would be glad to. Most of these allegations are pure fabrication. There is absolutely no evidence. I have not seen anything, and I have been in the camps numerous times, and I spent a couple of years between Western Sahara and the Tindouf camps when I was with MINURSO. The Polisario leaders don't have slaves. Come on, that's ridiculous. And some of the other allegations about the dark-skinned people being mistreated, etc., I found to be totally unfounded as well. Now, there was one incident that occurred when an Australian film crew went to the camps and they produced a documentary alleging that there was slavery exercised in the camps on the basis of their interview with one woman who had been brought there as a child and whom they claimed was a slave. I was very interested in this accusation to find out the truth behind the matter, so I went there and I interviewed the lady whose name is Fatim. And she told me that she was brought to the camps by someone whom she considered part of an extended family. And she was raised in the camps, and she was now an adult. She was married to a man whom she chose herself. She was not forced to be married to someone. And she said that she was definitely not a slave. She could go and do whatever she wanted in the camps freely. She didn't have to get the advice or permission of anyone, and that she continued to take care of this elderly woman who's now very elderly because of her affection to her and her respect for her. So, and I saw no evidence that she was treated as a slave or she considered herself to be a slave. Now, I did some investigations after that about the whole history of slavery in the area. And there was a practice of indentured servitude that we would consider slavery nowadays, that was practiced in remote parts and tribal areas of Morocco, Western Sahara, Mauritania, Mali, and many other countries in the region. And this was practiced back in the 1800s and the early 1900s. But by the mid-1900s, it had been basically wiped out by most of the governments in the area. And it includes the Polisario, who it would be totally anathema to everything that they have stood for in their policies and their laws to have slavery. It's against the whole reason why they created the SADR to begin with. And in any event, I did find that there were vestiges of these old practices that were still practiced by a minority of basically elderly people, and basically revolved around making women get the permission of the head of household before they could marry. All right. And this again is against the laws of the SADR. And when the SADR officials find out about it, they stomp down on it and make sure that it doesn't happen. But, you know, some elderly people are, it's difficult for them to change their old ways. But this, if it occurs at all, it has occurred among a handful of people. And it's this one practice we're talking about. It's not wholesale slavery by any means. Now, the Human Rights Watch report in 2014 said, and I'm quoting here, practice of slavery appear all but non-existent among the Sahrawi refugees today. And they pointed out that the SADR law was amended expressly to outlaw slavery in 2011. And to my knowledge, they are avidly trying to wipe out any vestiges of the old practices among their people in the camps. And I think that the allegations that are in this report are totally unfounded.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, for the very insightful, really dissecting of the, as you said, unfounded allegations. Okay. Najla, also like you, I would like to read an excerpt basically of the summary report. And if you can please speak onto it and your experience, your lifelong experience of being reborn and raised in the camps. So paragraph 59 in the summary report spoke of allegations made by the Joint Submission 11 gross human rights violations were still prevailing practices over 4 decades in the refugee camp. To include extrajudicial killings, kidnappings, enforced disappearances, arbitrary detention, torture, intimidation, and cruel and abusive treatment. Okay, this is also referenced in paragraph 60. The strength of these allegations, is particularly concerning to anyone reading it. So can you please speak to these allegations, and do they have truth? Is this something that's prevailing? What has your lifelong experience been like?
Hello, everyone. It is very ironic, actually, to hear those allegations. I've been used to hearing those allegations since I became an activist. I think the first time I went to an international platform was 2010, and I heard the same. They almost look like photocopied from what the Moroccans keep saying about the refugee camps. And it is heartbreaking for me as an individual who lives and grew up in those refugee camps. And you said it, that the reflection of the statistics you saw in the reports do not even reflect the Algerian concerns, but they make it to the final report on the situation of Algeria in general. And it is just, for me, it reflects that the investigations or the information that makes it to those reports are not actually trustworthy, because they reflect how much lobbying you have, how much power you have to influence the input of these reports. Because why is the real situation of the Sahrawi camps not reflected in those reports? The real conditions in the Sahrawi camps are not related to human rights violations under the Sahrawi leadership. The real violations is the umbrella cause of our existence in the camps, which is an occupation of our land, complete ignorance to international law, to the rights of the Sahrawi people to vote. I mean, like, I'm being prevented from voting for my own basic human right to decide my fate. I live in these refugee camps with my family, with my baby, because there is a country with its allies preventing me from deciding in a democratic and free referendum. And this is just to say that, like, I mean, a country that opposes a free referendum cannot speak about human rights situations in refugee camps. Going back to those allegations, I lived in the US for 3 years. I feel more safe in the refugee camps than I felt in the US. I decided to come back to the refugee camps and live here with my family. I sleep outside my house with my baby every night in the summer, feeling no danger whatsoever. And oh my God, like, this just makes me so angry, because why would such lies make it to an international report like this? Why? Like, I invite anybody who's concerned, who reads those allegations, to come to the camps and see with their own eyes. That's the only thing I can say. But try to go to Morocco, try to go to the occupied territory of Western Sahara with a human rights investigation purposes, and see what will happen. You know that MINURSO mission in Western Sahara is the only UN mission in the world that does not have human rights monitoring mandate in Western Sahara under the Moroccan Authority. Why? Those are the questions that should be asked in this report. In the refugee camps, we don't live ideal life. No, we don't live an ideal life, and we are not an ideal society. We're an Arab Muslim refugee society that found itself in the middle of a refugee camps that had gone through huge transformation from nomadic society to a modern civil society built in a refugee camps. I mean, I am so proud that we are what we are today, having the reality that we come from. You know, I think we are an example of anything that is society that came from nomadic lifestyle to a modern civil lifestyle, living in a refugee camp that is completely dependent on international aid. I cannot tell you that the mentality, that every Sahrawi mentality is perfect, that there is no racism in some concerns, but to say there is slavery, that's just unheard of. No, there is no slavery in the camps. My best friends are Black people. They live like surrounding my house, and they live better life than my own life. You know, they have the same right. They go to the same schools. They have the same power in the society. You know, as Kathleen had said, maybe like 100 years ago, there might have been some cases as slaves. I mean, in the US, it's still currently an issue. But to say that this is like prevailing or it's too much to make it to a human rights report like this, you know, this just reflects, and it is heartbreaking for me as an individual to see that the real conditions of the Sahrawi camps, the real cause of the existence of those refugee camps are not reflected in this report. But what makes it to this report is pure lies that, you know, of course, it's the Moroccan lobbyists trying to paint those refugee camps. But whoever, you know, I can speak so much about the reality here in the camps. But anybody who has concerns, who want to investigate, you come to the camps. Come to the camps, and you will do any investigation, any survey you want by your own. I guarantee you that. You can live with families. You can choose the family you want to stay with. You can choose a Black family. Whatever you want to do, you can come and start this investigation and see with your own eyes. Because for me, maybe you might see something that I don't see, but I tell you, I'm an active person in the society. I live here. I came back here 2019 after I finished school in the US. I also lived in numerous other places in Europe, but I decided to come back for my society, to be part of this reality, to help them, to educate women, to raise awareness about climate, about, you know, a lot of things that I'm interested in. So if there is I will do them from this, but I've never seen a slave in the camps. Never. I never saw a slave. And under the Polisario law, we are all the same. We get the same portion of food. We get the same access to school. We get the same access to hospitals. And the rest is you know, it's all the same. And rape, you know, when I was living in the US, I would walk outside, like I work at night. I gave one condition to my boss, that I cannot go home by myself at night. I have no concerns like this in the camps. I go see my friend who lives, you know, at the other side of the camp. You know, I told you, I sleep outside in the open air under the stars with my sisters and my baby, and there is no fear of rape. And this allegation of that the Polisario leadership have slaves, I mean, then why are they revolutionary people? Why are they fighting for their basic rights? You know, it's logic. It cannot be logic that, you know, that the Polisario leadership have slaves. You know, you cannot be a revolutionary fighter fighting for the rights of your people at the same time stepping over the heads of others. That's just not, it does not match. So, you know, for me, this makes me a bit speechless, because it's so, and I'm sorry to say this, it's just bullshit. And, you know, I'm sure you already arrived to your own conclusion that why is this survey not reflecting the real Algerian concerns, but all concentrated in the refugee camps, the Sahrawi refugee camps, but also not talking about the needs and the aims of the Sahrawis themselves, but stickers that have been following us for many years from the Moroccans. I'm even surprised I'm not seeing terrorism in those allegations, because these are one of the things I always hear and I always come across. Yes, so this would be my my input. I mean, I have so much to share, but I want to hear the input of others. If there is questions in the end, I would like to participate also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Najla. Thank you for your passionate. And I love that you guys are always inviting to see the camps. And I think that speaks volumes. So once more, thank you so much for your input.
Can you speak a little bit up? I cannot hear.
Oh, I apologize. I muted myself. I was going to say thank you so much for your participation. And I love how you guys always are very inviting to the camps. And I think that speaks volumes. So again, once more, thank you so much, Najla. Janet, I'd like to read for you an excerpt. And again, if you can help us in all your experience into unfolding these allegations and the truth in the allegations. So paragraph 15 in the summary report spoke of allegations made in JS, which is Joint Submission 5. And I quote, Algerian state authorities have so far carried out executions without any judicial or legal process, and that numerous killings by Algerian public forces against Sahrawi refugees have been reported. In your extensive experience, in all the connections that you have in the camps, everyone that you know, is there truth to it? Are there numerous cases of killings by Algerian public forces against Sahrawi people? Can you hear us, Janet? There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Something happened there. Yeah. I can hear you, but you can hear me now?
Now we can.
All right. Okay. Yeah. No, I have never experienced anything like that in the camps. When we are there, we are free to move about. We can talk to anybody we want. We can ask anything we want. And over the years, I have asked some of these things that I've heard Morocco alleging about the camps. I myself, having never seen any hint of what I've heard them say, but then to ask friends that I dearly trust in the camps, you know, is there something we're not seeing that's going on? And I mean, it's almost laughable for them, except how troubling to have to read about this stuff about your own people when you know it's not true at all. And if they were to investigate Morocco and the underground prisons where Sahrawi have been kept, I mean, horrendous stuff, stories that come from there, that's where they should be looking, of human rights abuses and horrific things that are done to people, their own people, but definitely the Sahrawi who have lived there. We've had one young man on foot came across the landmine berm. He had been in an underground prison and tortured by Morocco. He, just because he was Sahrawi and not following the silence rule, I guess. And the things that two men actually who had escaped on foot in the night, going across the landmine berm to come to the camps, looking for refuge, had similar stories of torture and the things they went through under Morocco's hands. Never anything like that have I heard of in the camps. Yeah, if there are more specific things of the allegations, I'm glad to respond to, but as Americans, we have freedom to go anywhere we want to in the camps. Nothing's off limits, other than things that would even be security for themselves, you know. But no, total freedom, total comfort. We sleep outside under the stars in the night. We're not behind fences or walls. We're just out there in the open desert, and even going to the dunes, which is outside the camps. We go there under their protection to make sure we're okay. But nothing has ever happened even in that unrestricted, unsupervised land around the camps. We've never had an issue. And we've brought lots of Americans with us there, and we're all roaming around, most of us not knowing what we're doing or where we are. But there's been no problem as far as security and safety and how we're treated.
Thank you very much. If you have anything else further that you want to add on, please feel free to do it, Janet.
I guess maybe I should add that we stay with people, with Sahrawi in the camps. We're not in the visitors areas. We are with the people in the tents. And of the many, I mean, we've probably brought 100 at least different Americans with us over the years to visit the camps, and we stay with families, and there's never been an incident where we were afraid or anyone even stole anything. Our suitcases are left open. You know, they can be left outside. I feel way safer in the camps than I would in a town here. So it's really almost surreal how kind and honorable the Sahrawi people are, just in any neighborhood, any tent.
Thank you so much for your insight. I greatly appreciate it. So our next speaker is going to be Mahjoub, who is actually going to talk to us about the misuse or lack of UPR for Western Sahara. So where do Sahrawi people, where are they able to communicate their concerns? Or is there a platform for Sahrawi people to communicate?
Thank you, Farida. Thank you, everyone, Kathleen, Janet, and Najla, and everyone here. Indeed, we have been listening to your interventions, and of course, it all comes down to one single definition of those allegations. It's just an attempt by Morocco to deviate and dilute the process, make the UPR looks like a joke, actually, and not to be taken serious. Allowing such, I cannot call them NGOs, but more gongos that try to overtake the process and fill it with unreasonable, ungrounded reports. Yeah, of course, considering Western Sahara as an occupied territory, we don't really have a special procedure where we can have a review on occupied territories, and that's something not only Western Sahara suffers from, but all the other 17 non-decolonized territories. So having said that, means that NGOs from Western Sahara, by participating in the UPR review on Morocco, somehow is a taboo. Some looks at it as an implicit recognition of Moroccan authority over Western Sahara, which makes it a question for us whether to take or not to take part in that process. However, in our reports as CODESA, we did indeed submit a report for the UPR in Morocco on Western Sahara, considering the fact that there is no special UPR in Western Sahara first, and the second, that Morocco is an occupying power that must be held responsible and accountable for the crimes against humanity and war crimes they commit in the occupied territories of Western Sahara against the international law. Considering also that the UN or the Human Rights Council mechanisms in first instance manage or try to manage a relationship between citizens and their own government, there is absolutely no system or procedure that manage relationship between civilians and a hostile military occupation. In the case of Western Sahara, as an example. Yeah, back to the allegations made on the refugee camps by Morocco. Those are like a repetitive approach by the Moroccan authorities that tries every now and then to overwhelm the interlocutors with false, fabricated informations to make or to create the mess and doubt on all the other reports which may be credible, consistent on the situation in the occupied territories of Western Sahara. And as raised before, the question is, if there are grave violations of human rights in the refugee camps, why Morocco is rejecting to extend the MINURSO mandate to cover human rights? Why? Who is the party that put the territory under siege and prevent international NGOs from accessing those territories and assess the human rights situation on the ground? It is, of course, Morocco that does that. And we have seen allegations that the entire refugee camps are prisoners forced to stay in the camps. We have seen allegations of ties with Hezbollah, Iran. We have seen allegations of having ties with Al-Qaeda and terrorists and every single terrorist group that exists in this earth. So the Moroccan allegations does not end anywhere. And anything that looks to the world as a bad example, Morocco will always try to link the Sahrawis with it, to smear the noble cause of the Sahrawi people, which is basically demanding a fundamental right that created the most of the world's nations, the self-determination as a fundamental right, and the right to independence. Western Sahara has not been, never been Moroccan and will never be. The Sahrawi people has the right to choose their own future, their own political future, freely, without interventions from or without any options or solutions that may be imposed on them against their will. I heard that permissions to women. Of course, we cannot claim that we are a perfect society, but I can, of course, confirm that we are far more advanced compared with the neighboring countries in terms of basic human rights in Western Sahara. there are major issues that are common in the entire region, cultural related, religion related issues that must be tackled or taken into consideration in the future. But definitely there are no such as presented in the allegation report presented by pro-Morocco organizations. So the absence of a specific UPR in Western Sahara opens the door to have this stone's throw using the Western Sahara question. We see, of course, that Morocco try every time to counterattack or to attack as best tactic for defense. To deviate, as I said, the process, but we cannot, of course, cannot compare countries who are, I mean, an occupying force with a regular country. Morocco is an occupying and hostile military occupation in Western Sahara, and will remain as such, as there is no definition for such presence in the international law, beside being an occupying power that must admit and respect the international humanitarian law as it applies to Western Sahara. I hope this was a bit of clarifying. I will be with you for the discussion, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so very, very much for that very insightful presentation and for certainly linking everything all together. So without further ado, this was the Algerian UPR, or the UPR for Algeria, yet, of course, very frustrating for Algerians and Algerian civil society is yet again, our voices are muted. And it's, of course, due to lack of ECOSOC status, which is, of course, consultatory status to the Human Rights Council, that we constantly have to rely on international organizations, good graces, if you will, or interest in order for us to get our point of view across. Through numerous events, through numerous, of course, most of you have the statistics. I've already sent the reports, but of course I can send them once more. Algerians have been very clear in voicing their opinion and voicing their concerns for the UPR. When asked the question of what does the Algerian public want the most, it is overwhelming. Okay, it is an overwhelming majority of over 50% that state that they want the release of the prisoners of detention, prisoners of detention, as well as freedom of expression, the idea of political and ideological speech, of protected speech to be expanded, and of unprotected speech to be limited. So without further ado, Boukhalfa, based on your experience, based on the organizational work, based on our work together and people on the ground, to finally give the Algerian people a voice and prioritize them, what do Algerians want for this UPR session? Can you hear us, Boukhalfa?
He's muted.
Okay, let me. Oops. Yeah, there you go.
I think you will hear me now.
Yes, now we can.
Okay, thank you. First, I would like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for devoting the time and framework to refocus the attention on Algeria and the democracy question that has been going on since 2019. The various grids, such as the summary reports, have failed in their attempt to analyze the situation and to prioritize the Algerian voice. So far, this pattern has occurred an international mechanism such as the UPR. What all these frames seems to have in common is that they ignore the real aspirations of Algerians, to live as citizens and in institutional framework that is respectful of the values of democracy. These aspirations carried on peacefully for more than 2 years was stopped by COVID-19 pandemic and the security and judicial relentlessness against activists and ordinary citizens. Don't forget, there is more than 340 prisoners in Algeria now, political prisoners, and for his opinion, for their conviction. Our NGO, Riposte Internationale, has continued to denounce these abuses, which spared no social liar. The desire for change goes beyond a social crisis. All the advocacy of different Algerian citizens of all points of view converge toward meaningful institutional change in clear, transparent, and systematic manner. One of the flagship slogans remains, it's very easy, Dawla Madaniya Mashi Askariya, which means a state run by civilian and not by the military, or such as like this oligarchy. An objective analysis on the situation would demonstrate without the slightest ambiguity that the essence of the Algerian claims concern over meaningful institutional and legislative change that is both sustainable and measurable, and which would allow for the construction of a democratic state where the representative will be elected in transparent, regular fashion. The vast majority of Algerians remain convinced that transition towards truth democratic states with unquestionable legitimacy will be strong presence in the Maghreb region, if by the way, in the North African region, one that is able to settle conflict with its various neighbors. What Algerians want is clear and transparent. The first point, unconditional release of the prisoners of opinion and political prisoner. Point number 2, freedom of expression to extend political and ideological speech through expanding protected speech and laying parameters for unprotected speech. Point 3, and to stop judicial and police harassment against all citizens. Algerians wish to find solution to the human rights question within the framework of a system of democratic representation. For this, we need to lead the advocacy and structure the framework, not be imposed a structure that is not in line with our demands, or not priorities, our voices, and or be used for political gain in interest. Once more, I thank you for your time and commitment for human rights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Boukhalfa, for bringing that all together and finally prioritizing and essentially, putting the people that should have been in front of this advocacy initiative at the beginning, which is the Algerian Voices. Thank you again for clarifying that Algerians have been clear and have addressed the concerns over and over again. I'm sure many of you have attended many of our events, and our speech is the same. It has not changed. It is the immediate action and the freedom of the detainees, followed by, of course, adjusting, amending, or reviewing legislation that is oppressing and limits freedom of expression. So thank you so much.